Welcome to the 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade podcast, a retrospective.
Hey folks, Brennan here. Thanks for tuning in to our 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade podcast. If you want to reach out or follow us, we're on Facebook and YouTube as 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade, Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch as 25 Years of VTM, and on our website at 25yearsofvtm.com. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to February's review, where we're going over the Ratkin book. I, of course, am Bob, and I'm accompanied by Mike. Mike, how we doing?
Pretty good, man. It's a good morning today.
It is a good morning, and boy, do I feel like of everybody, you are my definite co-host, right, in that regard. And what I mean by that is we bring the fun in review, right? That's what I feel we do. Where, like, you know, I tell you this, guys, all the time, right? When I have DJ on here, we're technical, we're hitting all the buttons, we're defining each little thing and blah, blah, blah. When I have Brennan on, Brennan tries to find the humor in things, and then he likes to find how this relates, the past versions of a thing to the current, right? So in this case, a lot of E5, whatever. And so when it's not there, T doesn't necessarily like to chime in on a book that was ancient before he was born. He's the baby. So that's how that is. But then when I get you, it's always smash mouth. And what I mean by that, you and I both, I feel, because we didn't talk about reading this book and coming back and having come to Jesus moment, I know we both had the same reaction, which was, what the hell is this? Right? It's exactly what I'm going to say. Like, Ratkin. Well, folks, we'll define Ratkin in a high level here. We'll say, well, what is this? It's supposed to be a werewolf review. This is a Werewolf the Apocalypse review of one of their shapeshifter families. They're one of the races they have there. And this is, of course, the Ratkin we're talking about. And up until this point, I would say that every single species they've had, like what we've done, Bastet, you know, we've werewolf, Bastet, Geralt, you know, we've had definitive hardcore. We see why they exist. We know why they're there, present, and everything else. Would you agree?
Yeah. Very clear sense of purpose from most of the breed books, for sure.
Then we get to this book, and I like to call things jump the shark moments. Right? Pun intended, because there are Rokia, Weresharks, one of my favorite books. But this jump the shark. Okay. Why I'm painting around the bush, this is going to piss some of you off who love the Ratkin. It really is. And I never knew why they didn't sit well with me. So what I'm explaining here is that I'm a fan of Werewolf. I love it to death. I have a bro who introduced damn near every aspect of Werewolf to me when he story told, and then I story told for him. What this did was it brought in two very different ways to story tell the material that seemed well polished and good and put together for some cool stories, cool action stories. And he didn't use Ratkin. And I never really knew why. Now, I read this book 2 or 3 times. So when you run Werewolf, you will have players, hey, can I play one of these crazy guys with a machine gun? And you're like, what the hell is this? And you look it up and you read it and you're like, okay, your guy is street assassin. Oh, why not just make a Bonar? That is the same thing. Or Glasswalker, or play something that they already have that fills this niche. And so that's what I'm kind of going to pitch to you, Mike, before we even get into it, right, a little bit. Don't you feel that there were other things in creation that already filled the niche of this book, tried to over the top?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I feel like that would be my broadest criticism of this book. It's got 2 major failings, in my opinion, but the big one is that it's like it's grabbing little pieces of this and that splat and little pieces of this and that archetype and trying to do some of this and that thing to the point where it's like, but who are the Ratkin? What is their niche? Right? Because they seem to be a gestalt of borrowed elements from other books, which is strange.
And it is strange. And I thought to myself, is there a way to save this? Normally I'm a king of that, right? Like I'm really good at that. And I'm trying to say, well, maybe the Ratkin are children of the Weaver. Maybe that's what's going on. Like, since man, there's been rat. And that would make sense, right? Because the cities, you had rats. Like, can you think of rats in the wild?
No, I can't conceptualize what they would be, although they must exist, right? There's such a thing as field mice. Owls have to eat something. Maybe they're kin to possums. Like, right? Like,
what I'm going to say is that there are many probably same species, right? Same field as a phylus as a rat, right?
Yeah,
that they exist. But where rat really comes into its own, it's the populace of a city, where filth lies, where there's places for rat to breed and breed safely, and in some areas become a predator of its own, of that subspecies, right? Scavenging and what have you. Even the thought of rat, let's just sewer rat. Nosferatu are called sewer rats for a reason. And what do they control in a city? Mainly when people think of Nosferatu, the first animal they're going to use, they're rats. Blah, 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 right? God, what I'm getting at is that when you think of this species of people, there's got to be something to them then. Something big. Well, no. It's what you said, and I'm going to see if we can kind of share this with it. Now, when I say this, it's not saying that this is a bad book. I could easily see why a lot of people like this book. It seems that you're being pitched a unique species with a unique fit that does their own unique thing, but maybe they're too unique. Right? Like this should have been if I told you that this was a completely different game, no affiliation of werewolf, vampire, anything, what would you think of it then?
I would play this game. If you pitch this to me as its own game, I would play it, I would run it, I would seek to expand on its lore. I can agree. That for sure.
Okay. Now, in a game that already has, like War of the Apocalypse, already has several Fera species, doesn't really need another. Because like we just said, each group kind of covers its own niche. You begin to wonder, why'd they come in? And that's why you think to yourself, when I hear of Ratkin, immediately, must be what Weaver created. Because the werewolves fucked up. They did that, right? Because why? Here's my thought. Before we get into any of it, it's like, well, we had the Impergium, and the werewolves screwed that up. And right there, there's supposed to be overpopulation, destruction, destructive humans, and out of control, and blah, blah, blah. And the werewolves had it in control, and then just didn't. Right? They had that Concord, and we're just like, nah, we're cool. But now we're saddled with this delirium. Oh, boo-hoo werewolves. People are now afraid of you when you shape change. Which, to me, is the weakest apology, I think, in the history of any book. Now, it also isn't very realistic. It's not meant to be realistic, I get that, but it's hard to digest. This book makes you look at it because what the Ratkins say is that they're kind of a consequence creation. Now, that's stealing a little bit into it, but we're just going to at least mention that much. Keep that in mind. And we'll circle back to it. The reason being is because I want to get into this actually pretty cool introduction story for a comic. Now, why I say pretty cool? I think the artwork is fantastic.
Agree.
I think the drawings for it is good. I think the premise is great for like an action TV show short. If I wanted to pitch Netflix or Amazon, my new show called Rat People, Getting Down or whatever you want to call it, I think this is a good start to it, to have it there. But the moment I try to explain to them everything else, we're going to lose it, right? In my opinion. But for the most part, what do you recall of the comic?
So I forget the guy's name. I thought it was something like Chaz. He is on the street, right? And it's weird because even his thought bubbles in the comic just give you this real meth addict vibe, right? Like he's kind of trippy, on edge. You can't tell if he's intoxicated, but he's definitely wired up some kind of way, right? He's going into O'Tully's with a friend of his because there's just like this exquisite, extreme, toxic worm stank coming off this restaurant. And they got to do something about it, right? Whatever kind of rat people they are, they're just super duper agitated by this worm stank at this particular place. And so they walk a bomb into a McDonald's, which struck me as odd, but I'm sorry, not McDonald's, O'Tully's. Struck me as odd. Seems like a whole lot of hammer for only a little bit of nail. But anyway, they walk a bomb in there, and they're about to let it go off. And then he has this moment of like in the Matrix when everybody turns around and looks at Neo and they're all Agent Smith. It's like as if everybody in the street recognizes him, and he's seeing veins everywhere. Predictably, this kind of what is the word? Snowballs into a fight in the middle of the street, but there's still a bomb involved because somebody brought it out of the O'Tully's, right? He dies. To spoil the comic a bit for you, he dies in the middle of his fight. So does his buddy. His girl survives. But two of them die to this great, big, awful, like, Bane creature that comes out from under the middle of the street. Except they take the Bane creature thing out with them because the bomb goes off in its mouth. And then, like, the last few panels of the comic are his girl walking around kind of cinematically with her Uzi. And there's, like, posters of his face up now, Che Guevara style.
Right, Chubby, I think is his name actually.
You got it. You remember? I'm sorry, my memory's escaping me. But yeah, and it like paints him to be a hero, but they kind of try to invoke like the super radical terrorist revolutionary vibe because he did what he had to do to strike at the worm. And the whole time I'm thinking, well, I mean, a pack of Garu would have just killed everyone there and high-fived and walked away, right? Like,
but when I'm thinking, like, there's ways to look at it. I read this comic before, and we had this fun thing where we were going to play a werewolf game, and the way my bro did it, he's sorry, Bob. He's like, okay, Brandon, what's up? He goes, doing the werewolf. How we're doing it is I'm putting all the Fera books, or there's basic werewolf, and I'm going to put them all in the middle. But here's the trick: you're not going to know which book you're picking. So this is going to be completely fair. There's like 6 of us and fun ideas, and you just grab it, and you read the intro comic, and you decide yay or nay. I remember grabbing this book as my pick, and I was all shades of no from this comic. And he had asked me, out of curiosity, why not? Because I honestly thought whoever grabbed that book would be about it, and then I'd have to tell them, I haven't really cared for it, blah, blah, blah. Basically the storyteller's version of, not my cup of tea, but if you really want to play it, yeah, we can run you. And he added the fact that maybe as NPCs, they're better. Kind of had that wisdom drop. I was like, okay, I'm with you. And I said, no, I don't want to because your comic's cheesy. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I was like, let's address some things. So Chuvy appears to be a schizophrenic. That's exactly what he appears to be. Yeah. He's walking around having issues with reality. People are normal one moment, then the next they're completely Bane-ridden monstrosities, and he can't hold it together. And he's doing that. Now, you learn later on that's kind of an affliction some Ratkin have. And there's a certain type of Ratkin that suffers from it. I believe, was it tweakers?
Well, it's tweakers and what? Munchausen.
It can be.
Yeah.
It can be, right? So, but the thing is that the Munchausen, like they say, they return from the lost realms of the spirit world, right? Fulfilling the curse of Ratkin bards a millennia ago. I remember that sticking out because it seemed like a different game.
Yeah.
Right? Many are born as spirits due to the fact of their unique way of the birthing plague, flesh and blood, and all that fun stuff, right? Mm-hmm. They come from a very hard way to do it. However, the Twitchers are Ratkin who reflect the rage of a dying world. Right? That's what that's supposed to be. They're servers of the Rat God. They unleash anarchy and destruction, preparing humanity for the final days of the apocalypse. but they succumb to rage. That's what they often do as madmen. They lose their shit, so to speak. This doesn't feel like that's what this comic was. Like, this comic was over the top even by that standard.
Yeah.
Because it's not to say a schizophrenic can't exist in a world of darkness, or you can't have a hero who has an affliction. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying he's walking around with a pack mate, or a litter mate, if you will, because they're rats. But this other guy has his shit together, as he says, and let's look over Otoli's. Let's define this. Remember, Otoli's exist alongside McDonald's in the world of darkness. McDonald's exists. It's just Otoli's is the more popular chain, if you can imagine that.
Somehow.
Right? Due to Pentex, right, is the somehow. And people just get better deals. It just seems to be a more savory meal. It's just better. The answer is addiction and possession. That's how Pentex wins. So McDonald's, as terrible as the world of darkness is the healthier version of Otoli's, is how it works, right? And and it is what it is. And by the way, yes, I'm aware there are people who eat successful diets on McDonald's or what have you, but there's a ton of information about how eating burgers every day, you're going to see some pretty detriment to your health stories, right? It's good now and again, like anything else in moderation. And Otoli's would say, damn your information. That's what they do. Come to us and try our burger and taste the difference in health. We're certain you'll like it. And why we're certain you'll like it is because that Bane special that you'll be slopping down your face, because it's like basically a dose of femoral, slightly, grilled and thrown into you, is going to guarantee something nasty's going to crawl up inside you and get in them guts. And then you're ours. As it goes. But Chuvy, twitching away, is going through, and he's talking about the system and how the system has made it to where people are slurping down these, barely nutritional sandwiches that are grease-laden, clogging artery, destructive force of food, and taking shakes 3 times the whatever caloric intake they need, choking the populace, starving them, leaving these beastly, overfed, huge pig people that are walking about. And of course the comic shows this big woman holding her kid's hand, and all they know how to do is to tell their kids to shut up. But really, when you look at the comic, and I tried doing this, what about their perspective? This guy's walking down the street raving, thinking it's internal. Right? That's what he's doing. Everybody's turning their head looking at him because he's a little disheveled, and he's having this allegedly internal monologue. But everyone could be looking at him, because if you're walking down the street, go ahead.
And to be clear, he's doing all this with a great big fucking duffel bag on his hip, right?
Right.
He's not just the raving schizophrenic person walking down the street. He is prepared for something.
And right, we don't know what's going on, but a lot of people, like, the face is there. One moment, the way they're drawn, because a picture speaks 1,000 words to me, you could say, they're like, who the hell is this guy? Like, what the hell's his problem? Like, he's staring at people, mean mugging. You get his disposition. Plus, he's this insane dude. Not only that, let's assume that this is all internal, and he's walking around. Now he's a disheveled guy with a duffel bag, staring at people, making all sorts of prejudgment, snap decisions, and he's destined to want to kill a bunch of people. He's set to commit mass murder right now as a bomber. That's his intent, is to kill a whole bunch of people. Now, why Otoli's? Well, because he knows it's Bane food. They're making Banes here. But no one's pumping the brakes. That's my important thing about these Ratkins so far. At least this Chuvy guy isn't. Neither is his friend or his mate who's waiting in the car, right? Now, when they get into this place, what's he doing? He actually orders food. Right, he gets to the counter, gets all the way up there, orders food, like some sort of ridiculous thing that's Otoli's, like the Belly Buster and the Sea Swamp special drink or whatever the hell it is. And he leaves the duffel bag at the counter and he walks out. But as he's walking out, he gets hit with that's after his buddy does that head nod. Sees him in there. His buddy ate something there. It looks like it. He's about to eat something there. So right there, I have a disconnect. You're ordering food from there, which speaks of the fact that you must have done it before, and you know it's bad because you smelled something was off or whatever. Why are you eating there again? We'll leave that where it is. That's problem number one. Number two, you see the guy at the counter as being this giant mouth with claws that hands you your food. You calmly pay him as much as you can. You got to get the hell out of there. Then as you're getting out of there and your buddy's already gone, you leave your duffel bag, get outside, and you suffer this crippling hallucination sent to you by the rat god of what the apocalypse is about. And as you hit the street, as you said, he sees everybody as this monstrous element, like all around him, and they're all staring at him. It's because they all knew. As he was walking out, that paranoia built, and he knew they all knew. He's like, oh man, now they all know I'm going to blow the place up. Now they know what's going on. Oh man, we screwed up. But what's his vision? He has a vision of him running down, shooting a bunch of people, and it's not people. Wait a second. These are vampire spawn or vampire fledglings. This is in the future. The vampires have X's carved into their head, which, by the way, is artwork I've seen in World of Darkness books before. I never get it. The random vampire X in the four. Someone must have thought there was going to be X vamps or just disposable vamps, or maybe that's just the theme that missed me as Bob. And it's sort of a punk thing to have like that X mark or whatever, or a barcode ripped out. I have no idea. But the point is, it shows them there. And I got shades of like reading an X-Force comic.
Yeah.
Because X-Force did a lot of that, right? Like they were just kind of like chasing Cable through time, and they'd be in an alternate future, and there's these dystopian events and forces and all that stuff. And I'm not in the weeds, just trust me, that's the feel when you see this. But then immediately I thought of the Terminator when you see his mate. She has like a missing eye, or it's not missing, it's like milked over. It's white due to some sort of damage or disease maybe, you're not really certain. And even he says, and who's that? Oh, I'm shooting. He goes, oh, that's not me. Oh man, is that our son? That's my son. And that's what he sees. That's their future. And he's like, oh, wow. And then he looks up and someone goes, excuse me, sir, you forgot your duffel bag? Hallucination's over. Is this bag yours? He's like, oh shit, that's the bomb. Well, once that happens, he says, nope, can't have this happen, pulls his gun and shoots the woman in the face who brought him the bag. And they're made certain you saw that it was a normal woman who brought out his bag, and he shot her in the face. And once he shot her in the face, it was on. And then he sees, basically monsters everywhere as he's opening fire and his buddy's opening fire. But then the craziest shit I've ever seen. The building erupts. They came here because allegedly a Bane monster sat dormant underneath the city, feeding through osmosis these feelings of negativity, gluttony, slothfulness, and disease. And that's just what it was doing. And so they came to Otoli's to bomb it, to get to the epicenter and blow it up. Well, it erupts out of the ground. Full-blown manifestation. It's if you take a spider's body and then split its head, it's a 3 mouths, these weird, perfect toothed mouths, but the teeth are like, each mouth could bite a car in half. Is what it is. And they have these mandibles that go over the main mouth, and but it has the spider eyes. It's a really good creepy drawing. It doesn't make any sense that erupted in the real world at all for werewolf. Up to this point, we're being told how spirits have a hell of a time manifesting. They can't do it. There's certain crossings they got to do. It's super pain in the ass. The Weaver, right? There's a gauntlet. You can't just do that. The energy required would be stupendous. And, that's that. It's a jump the shark moment for that alone. And that should leave you with like, maybe you're being a little harsh, Bob. Nah, screw that. I'm not being harsh. It's like, why is it that nobody else detected this super being, but the Ratkin, they're the one. Oh, it slipped through the cracks. We're here to handle it. Well, it's their comic. I get it. Trust me, I do. But when it comes out, I'm like, why would you send only 3 Ratkin? Or really 2 Ratkin and a breeder, because she's nothing special. She's just kinfolk. Yeah. And by Ratkin standards, who you sleep with, the kinfolk are the offspring. Right? So I can't even call her kinfolk. She's just the thought he brought along. I'm just right. This is one of that they produced through. This is basically how it is. So when you look at it that way, you're like, okay, I'm trying to grasp the threads that you even laid out and say that this is what's going on, and it doesn't make any sense. Because, like you said, when this creature comes out, first thing it does is it immediately kills his buddy. slams a mandible right through his side, and his buddy's dead and gone. And he's like, no! And then he turns and sees his girl's coming up the street, like she's pulling up to get him. And then what happens? Boom, he's dead as the other mandible goes through him. And then it's not done. It's going to eat him. And it's bringing him towards its maw. No! So the only thing he could do, rats have a tail. And he wraps his tail around the bomb because the bomb's about to go off anyway. And he's like, bon appetit, fucker. And it swallows it and it explodes. Right? And his girlfriend's like, oh no, Chuvy. And then they show the poster. Right? And she's pregnant. And she's like, well, my name's Sarah Connor. And he died for a good cause to put down the Terminator. And now I fight to defend the son that's going to save the world. Dun 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 dun. As it ends it, right? And that's the thing. And I was like, well, now I'm not shocked why so many years ago when I had this book and I read it and I was like, I'm not playing these guys. I'm just going to walk away from it. Because what was my sum total from the comic in and of itself? A cool story. Kiss my ass. Werewolf is not supposed to be heroic. Does that make sense?
But that's, again, it's not supposed to be heroic. And the moments that look heroic shouldn't also be senseless terrorism, mental illness, campy fun time.
This is my point. My point. From the Ratkin's perspective, think about it. If you look at this is literally the Terminator. Yeah. The Terminator's draw is that there's an apocalyptic future, and this strong mom has to come up and face this futuristic threat in the present with no super skills at all, but she has to learn them quickly, being taught by the very same enemy that was sent by her son to defend them from the new threat, and that's T2, right? And her son's like, okay, I guess I take this in stride if you say so, right? Father figure is a death bot. However you want to look at that. That's basically what this comic says it is. In a nutshell, right? That's what it's going to be if you get to the kid's perspective later on down the road. There's a lot it's pulling from. But that means it makes it a hero. It's the hero you don't know about, is how this is set up. But like you said, that's not it's not the only way to look at it. In fact, what I've always dug about Werewolf the Apocalypse is, yes, there are heroic things you can do from the werewolf perspective, but it always felt that they were heroes darkly tainted. Like these sacrificial scenarios are because the apocalypse is now, they've screwed up. Everything to this point has fallen apart and they're riding it out. Hopefully they rage. Hopefully they kick in as a group to shut down the worm or fix some things and do whatever. And the tales are about how these, every player, they're born into the society and they're that burning bright candle in the darkness. Like, how do they do? And of course they're going to have glorious ends or accomplish some things, but they're going to come at great sacrifice and cost. But they could sit back and philosophically look at it and say, we were doomed before we started. Yeah. This all happened before we even got to it. And, what do we do? In this, you may think, well, they're the heroes. Well, no, the heroes always win. That's kind of the key thing to a hero. It's not that you can't be heroic, but it's supposed to be a dark tale. This is something that's akin to a Greek tragedy, is what I feel Werewolf is always designed to do. But many people focus on the fun, heroic elements, never complete the game. So you always remember your character in the high point, never get to that sacrifice or that story ending or what happens. Perfectly fine. This book, The Ratkin, is written going, don't worry about it. This is our time, baby. The apocalypse is our time. This was foretold, and we're coming back to handle it. So this is our book, and this is what it's all about. And that opening comic's a little taste of it. So where we may not be super fans of it, some of you will be. And like I said, I didn't say it's terrible. I'm just saying it didn't feel Werewolf. It felt like a completely new game. And I feel it should have stayed there. Because if it was a completely new game, yeah.
You may not be willing to say it's terrible. I will fall on that sword. This might be the first White Wolf book I have read in a long time. Like, I can't recall the last one that I could find no sense of purpose in. Like, who is this for? They aren't the heroes. They aren't the bad guys because you try to equivocate for them. They aren't like the seed of hope, but they also aren't the harbingers of doom. They aren't storyteller characters who are serving the ends of the triad in some way we can't quite understand. They aren't worm tainted. They claim to be servants of Gaia, but none of their actions or methods say that they are. If this is a book made for no player and no storyteller, they are self-described as agents of chaos because they somehow think that they'll introduce chaos on behalf of the wild and undermine the role of the worm since the worm is trapped and useless or something. But they just sound like weird worm-tainted madmen who at the same time don't have the organization or the discipline to follow the worm's ends. So it's who's this for? On any level, this book doesn't fit anywhere. It's like they had too many ideas of what the Ratkin were gonna be, and they just put them all into one text.
Now, I'm going to get with you on that, except for the fact that what we need to do is take it from the perspective they laid it out. There's always a baseline I find, and I found it. You said chaos. They're the children of chaos. That's how they see themselves, the embodiment. They preserved it. What they really mean by chaos is the wild. I want you to keep that in your mind, that they saved it. Now, to understand how they saved it, we have to see what occurred that made them do it. To the Ratkin, very simply in the introduction says, the Ratkin were made to succeed where the Guru failed. That's what Gaia's purpose was for them. Now, what does that mean? It means for every failing the Guru had, the Ratkin succeeded. This is where your brain goes, what? Because that's what mine did. So the Guru screw up, and the Ratkin go, good job, guys. Good job. High five. It's what we meant to do. It's what we meant to do. Because that's what they're saying. Now let's think about this. What do they count as screwing up? The Impergium. We'll just go to it. Right? Yeah, Mike, go ahead. I see you gesture, that's why I'm stopping, but go for it.
But they describe the failure of the Impergium not as the Garu overreaching, although they describe that as a failure too. They describe the failure of the Impergium as the Garu not finishing the job.
Now, that's correct. Because they go on to talk about the fact that, well, where the Guru were meant to keep the population of humankind under control by teaching them, remember that, as teacher, they were supposed to guide mankind to not want to have an imbalance. This means the Ratkin were always the fail-safe. In other words, what they're saying is rats do exist in cities with humans, but there must be a reason for that. Now, according to the writers here, what they're saying is, well, because rats were always around humans, and really you don't find rats in the wild because there's different versions of what their species is out in the wild because they have to adapt. And so you said yourself, field mice and mice are more like that, but they get more aggressive when they don't have a natural predator, which is what you have in a city. Minus dogs, but they live in the sewers and pipings, so they bypass that, and they're scavengers, pro-scavengers, living in the trash of mankind and thriving. But also, what does that mean? Well, they carry disease, like the bubonic plague, right? That's rats carried that in and wiped everybody out. And you can tell that's exactly what they're referring to. They're saying, well, because the Guru couldn't keep the balance of humans, they permitted them to get these massive cities. And because of that, the Ratkin stepped in and they started diseasing mankind to prevent them overrunning the world. Seems to me to be a little bullshit. Because we're right here. What was the Impergium? It was the Guru culling mankind left and right, going too far, and having agreed to stop doing it. Because the delirium is a direct result of them instilling these barbaric practices and terror, as the Ratkin put it, and as some Guru tribes put it as well, that were so terrifying, mankind feels it in their bones. That to this very day, we can't let go of the horror that a werewolf instills in us when we see it, and that's what's called the delirium. Now, if you're Bob, I've always laughed at the idea of the delirium, 100% completely. Because it's a convenient excuse not to have werewolves hunted. That's what it is. They go, Krynos, we don't know what it was. Could have been a bear. Could have been a wild story. It was a serial killer. It was a walking car wreck. That's what tore all these people apart. And Gaia takes care of her own. To me, that's a great gift from the spirits. It's not a detriment to werewolves. So to me, seems that somebody rewarded you for your impergium that you say is a consequence in the delirium. So, okay, so here even the Ratkin are saying, oh, they got that because of that. Those sons of bitches, they deserved it. And you're sitting here thinking to yourself, but you brought a disease that nearly made mankind extinct. Right? That an unprecedented death. Right death, in stories and stuff. And you're like, all right, so apparently that's a success for you. Because if you did not do that, mankind would have overpopulated the world. All right. I will, I'm going to file that under cool story, bro. That's all I got. I got nothing there. That's one failing that universally everybody points at. That's what was, it was not the reason for the War of Rage, though. We know that wasn't the reason for the War of Rage. If we recall, Mike, the reason for the War of Rage was because the werewolves said, we're king shit.
Yep.
We were made to do what guys said, and we're going to do that. And guess what? You're all going to get in line, and you're going to tell us what we want to know. And we're going to start with these Garal because they got this immortality. You're going to give it to us. You're going to tell us how it's here, or else. And by the way, that wasn't the first blow thrown. Right, as we learned from the Mexico stuff and going through that Trails of Mexico book that went through, it was the Shadow Lords who wiped out an entire species, entire Fera, that they count as the War of Rage Part 2. And you sit there and go, is it really a War of Rage? Or are we looking at a totalitarian, almost Nazi-esque Werewolf the Apocalypse? Like the werewolves themselves are this super elitist, tyrannical organization that come up with a reason why they're the pure and all the other Fera are not. That they're second class.
Yeah, it does kind of raise the question of why every text describes it as a war, because you never really hear about the valiant resistance or like who the other side of the war was. It's always the description of some permutation of Garu genocide against whoever the subject of the book is, unless it's a Garu book, in which case, oh guys, our bad, but you guys had it coming. Moving on, and we just kind of,
it slams that down, but I feel this Ratkin book really makes that an obvious, what a shitty way, because ultimately every book so far has gone over the Fera's perspective has been, oh man, they treated us, this is bad what they've done, and we have our ideas, we don't really know what's going on 100%, blah blah blah. Here it says pretty much carte blanche. The Ratkin know exactly what happened and what went on. And they know that because the werewolves were making deals with them. What? Yeah, let me explain it to you again. According to them, the Ratkin were being used. Basically, any dirty thing that had to be done, the Ratkin were doing in the name of Gaia. I'm going to let that sit with you. Because, I want everybody to know this. The United States gets a lot of shit for CIA, Black Ops, NSA, stuff like that, intelligence agencies. But, to them, they do what they must to keep the nation whole. We find that mentality adopted for the Ratkins' excuse. We're the people you don't want to know about that keep the guru where they are. And as long as, and in the beginning, the guru remembered that and we were okay. But what am I referring to? Well, the Ratkin espoused Gaia permitted them to use chaos itself. In other words, the wild. But the very worst of the wild, diseases, rampant, plagues, rampant, assassination, even things that are kin to or borderline or directly worm-tainted or weaver-tainted, whatever they need to use to get the job done. As they describe it, forbidden gifts and tricks just to succeed in their task. And that's what the Ratkin are meant to do. And the Guru were just, yeah, we'll use them for that, because that way we don't have to sully ourselves. But when this War of Rage erupted, they point out how the Guru, because they were aware of them, killed them first. Started smoking them, right, as they call it. Like, because they had these bards, these Ratkin bards, who were like, yeah, we'll make this deal for you, because they're the ones who did the contracts in the first place. And then suddenly, Right. And then suddenly the werewolves were like, yep, that's them. Those are the Ratkin. That's all of them, we believe. These 6 guys, all the Ratkin anywhere. Hey, boss, there's a lot more than 6 rats in existence. I mean, there's more than 6 rats on the block I live. Are we certain there's only 6 Ratkin? Oh, yeah, whatever. The number doesn't matter, but these are these guys, so let's wipe them out. But they act like all of their bards were there. Right? That's what they say. All of them are there. And folks, we're not talking that this is a Ratkin talking about other Ratkin. This is literally the introduction explaining what happened to the Ratkin. There's just this obligatory, not exactly completely laid out to make sense story that you're supposed to swallow, where this mass genocide of Ratkin happened at this special meeting. Now, I don't know about you. I thought the Grawl were at a special meeting where they were called in to do what they're supposed to do, and the Grawl refused, and then, like, boom, they're dead. And then they start, and then from that meeting, the werewolves had that big concordian, and they decided we're hunting all of them. Anyone not werewolf's got to go. We're going to find them and kill them. Bring in the lore masters and bring in other lore masters. Let's find them and end them. And they started running about to do the thing. And then the Bastet saw from afar what the werewolves were doing, and they started talking to their kin, run and hide if you can, protect your turf, you know. But the Bat people apparently just stayed in Mexico, asking Gaia, is this the way you wanted it to be? We're in our caves. Do you want us to die, Gaia? You going to help us, Gaia? Bat, help us, right? Like, help us in there. And, remember, the Shadowlords killed them because they go, hey, Bat totem, that's BSD. You look like a BSD. Every BSD we find has, like, Patagia and bat wings and weird bat noses, bat ears. You're a bat guy. It's time to kill the bat. And they wipe out the bats. Right? Justifiable. Meanwhile, everybody else is hunting. Well, is it a bear? Is it a shape-shifting bear? Yeah, kill that bear, too. Unless he gives you a special jar of honey that makes him immortal. He's got that special honey jar. Get the immortal bees and bring them back to my apiary, and that can still kill him. Still kill him. If you get the immortal jam, we can't have him around. So they start wiping them out. And then they're making the rounds, right? They're just going through killing everybody. And what cracks me up, we haven't gone through the highs and lows of the Macaulay just yet. But let's just say that's an interesting topic. The weird dinosaurs, your werewolves just walked up and killed them. That's something we'll laugh at another time. But that's how the most OP of the Fera right there are these guys, right? So sure, akin to the walking dino gods, they were just getting wiped out. But here's the Ratkin that nobody gave a shit about. And what are they doing? Everybody run! What? The bards were dying. I'm just going to say how it is. The bards are dying, and the few that were left before they were completely wiped out, they went to this special cave, and they said to the rat gods, oh, it's terrible. They're going to kill us. We invoke an ancestral curse of terrible magnitude. We're now going to put down the curse of curses, the curse that should never have been ignored twice and looked upon once. We give the terrible eye. We give the terrible stink eye. We give every eye we need to give to make sure that we will come back at an undisclosed time far into the future, and wrath. You will reap what you sow. Wrath, werewolves, wrath. And then they left that meeting and got killed. Right? They left and went to their death. But word got out. The spirits told the others, and basically, as the Ratkin said, most of them said, you know what? Screw this. And they ran into the Umbra. Well, that's what they did. You may be asking yourself, Mike, why didn't the other species just run into the Umbra? Like, if we could all just do that, and just go, well, let's go to the Umbra and see what they want to do and get out of the real world. And then they just disappear. It seems to be a convenient out, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's because the other species said, well, I'm not giving up real world stuff. We're fighting to defend territory. It's what we do. We don't give territory. We defend it. We got that animal instinct. Well, not rats. Rats didn't have that. They were like, screw this. We'll be back. And took off. You know, they died running is what we're talking about here. So it's like, okay, all right.
They died tired.
Right. That's the effect. And so they're gone. But because they didn't fight the werewolves in the physical world directly, the werewolves assumed they were dead. They caught all of them. They're dead, and they disappeared. Well, to the Ratkin, they're coming back in a time of winter. It's that time when there's no food for anyone, and the famine is done here, and the plague is done, gone, and rescinded, and the dead are the dead, and now we're with the survivors, and it's their time to come back to fight that apocalyptic battle where they're here to get their revenge on everyone. They're here to take it out on the Guru. They're here to take it out on the Weaver. They're here to take it out on the Worm, all in the name of the Wild. They're here to make it happen. And I know what you're thinking, because I thought of it since I started hearing that they were engines of the Wild. Where do the Red Talons fit in your scheme here?
Right? Ye engines of the wild who dwell in the lattice work of the cities.
Yeah.
Ye who have a beef with the Garu, 30% of which are sworn to the wild.
like trying to figure this out. Like, okay, so this is a high octane story where you're telling that they're coming back to do. And then I said, well, what it really seems happened is these things, as I'm going to call the Ratkin, were attached without question to the Guru in some form of symbiosis. And that symbiosis to me seems to be they came about when mankind did. There's no in between. That the moment the Guru couldn't keep them in check and the population was going haywire, and it seemed the Guru were saddled with an impossible war against the Worm, that they're kind of labeling Gaia as the ever thoughtful creator who had Ratkin kind of gain this spiritual power. And this, basically self-aware, and that they were useful, and suddenly this is what they needed to do. Because you didn't need the Ratkin before this at all. And so now they're needed. And okay, well, what brought that need about? Well, then the Umbra. The moment the physical world became separate from the Umbra and you had the Gauntlet is when the Ratkin came online, is the best way to put it. That's when they were like, why'd this happen? Well, for the same reason it all happened. The Impergium, that's the mistake. Into the Ratkin. Now we're stepping up because you grew screwed up. And the Guru didn't like that. And I sat here and said to myself, well, that should have been the reason from the beginning. It's not the Graal's fault. It's the Ratkin's fault. Or really, it's Gaia's fault. They're going to start pointing. Think about it. Well, because it's either Gaia's a moron, right? But that's what the writers are putting up here. Gaia's a complete and utter idiot. And, everyone's thinking, Bob, whoa, that's their God. Yeah, their God's stupid. And I'm going to point this out. Here's why. Let me get this straight. You're going to make Guru the protectors and saddle them with defending you against all the problems there is. And you're going to give these Ratkin power to, as they said, to succeed where Guru fail. But you would think that would make them elite shock troops. That they're the failsafe, the stopgap that the Guru are well aware of. That if we can't get this done, turn it over to the Ratkin. They're a final solution that is a dark one that we didn't want to have to do, but now we have to do it. So you would think it'd be something better written, in my opinion, if there was a meeting, scrap this comic and what they said they were about, and you learned that Ratkin were always here. That for every 5 human beings, one Ratkin is born, they're due to a terrible virulent plague that they can literally contaminate and create more of their own by simply biting another human. Mm-hmm. That this is Gaia's task they gave to them, that's a sacred right. They don't do this frivolously. Now, there's an aspect of it because they can do that. There's a type of plague they can do to create more of their own kind and whatnot, and that's what this becomes. But you're sitting here thinking, it's one end to say Gaia empowered them to be able to do this, but the Guru guard their secret. Now, why would this make sense? If the Guru had the Ratkin as special assassins, they're to handle the most dangerous of tasks that they can't do. Admittedly, because their numbers are down, because the Guru can't breed as well as the Ratkin and what have you, then there's another species that is super badass and well written, if not a knockoff of the Assamite clan, and that is the Naga. Mm-hmm. Right? They have that book, and we'll get to those later. Those are the literal assassins of Gaia. They don't answer to anybody but Gaia directly, and when something really evil is born, these Naga go and kill it. It's that simple. And they're tasked with all sorts of cool shit to do that. And often aren't allowed to be played by players for the same reason in a vampire game, no, not everybody's just playing Assamites. Right? It's a little one-sided and broken, what you're going to be doing all the time. Not a whole lot there. But my point is, here's these Naga who are assassins, and now wait a second, we have these Ratkin who are assassins as well. And we'll get to the Naga to make that more sense to you, but I know about them down the road. This right here in this book, even just reading about them, if the Naga don't exist, the Ratkin are those assassins and terrorists and anarchists, then what's the point? Because it's either the Guru are defending Gaia or the Guru are dead and don't know it yet.
Yeah, I mean, and the Ratkin, to their credit, like, they kind of see it that way, right? They describe the Guru a little bit as being in denial of the futility of their mission and the finality of their fate, and kind of being a self-licking ice cream cone in their so-called mission to fight the worm. Right? So maybe the Ratkin do see the Guru as dead.
and that's how you have to see it. I mean, that's literally the conclusion you have to draw to. But I'm a stickler for, if there's a introduction written by an author and they're trying to give you a high overview of what's in this book, and I do appreciate that, because that comes without the hype of the colored creative narratives that you could tell where the species talks about itself from their own perspective and you're left to draw your own conclusions. That's why I enjoy introductions, because it's without that. And it should stay flat out a clear and defined purpose. Well, the clear purpose is to succeed where the Guru fail. That's it. And when you're left to that, it's like, well, it depends on what I see as a Guru failing. And when you start peeling back that dangerous onion, you begin to go, well, the rat can equally suck then. You know what I mean? You failed and failed again unless you're serving the worm. I don't really understand exactly what you were trying to accomplish. So, that's just the feeling I got from it. So let's go through a little bit and kind of see. Let's kind of look at what they're about, at least in terms of how they kind of break down society wise. I know we went a long time here and going over that, and it may be that we'll get even deeper into this book to look at society powers and things you could play around with and do whatever. But I would just leave that to you guys. I'm going to wait till people demand us to do that book and get drunk and then do that. Because at the moment, I don't see really a point, because there's not a whole lot of room in Werewolf for why the Ratkin would even be mentioned other than this book this one time as a playable, unitable thing. So, Mike, before we get into all this, I've done a lot of talking. I know that. Help me out with something. How do these Ratkin make more of themselves? What's unique, at least in that? Like when I mention they have unique ways, like werewolves have to breed and blah blah blah, low percentage chance or whatever. Is that the same stick for the Ratkin?
No. Well, so the book kind of makes it weird, right? The book says that there's like a multi-stage kind of separate process of like the Ratkin seed the community with potential rats, but then every so often when the time comes, they go and bite one of those people who've been seeded, and then they become Ratkin through a really involved process, right? So it's like they go out and they breed in the traditional biblical carnal sense with whoever, whether be they rats or humans. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that are considered rat folk, kinfolk. But then there's a particular rite of something infection, or they bite you and you get sick if you are the offspring of a Ratkin.
It's literally called the birthing plague, is what you're referring to.
Yeah, there you go. And then, like, you go into a delirium, not in the sense of the fear, but like a disease of the mind and body with a fever. And you have visions, and like the ancestral memories of the Ratkin come back and menace you and give you portents of your own future and give you views into the past. And you're also almost dead. Like, you kind of need a trip sitter for this, because it might kill you. Which is the part that was weird to me, because rats are supposed to be able to breed real fast and indiscriminately. So it's like, do we have a bunch of Ratkin or don't we? Or can we breed quickly? Or is our birth a near-death experience every time? And the book kind of tries to say it's both.
And so, and it does dive into that too, right? It does say flat out, well, what's kinfolk? It's the offspring of the Ratkin, which is unique, right? Because remember, the Guru kind of, their kinfolk are who they are allowed to breed with.
Yes, they're mates.
This book, right? This book highlights that they could breed with anybody.
Yeah.
Literally says that the human that they have that they breed with. Well, I'll just quote it to you, right? If the mother is a rodent's ratkin, in other words, she's a rat in origin, she bears a litter of rat kinfolk. We know how rats bear litters, right? If the mother is a homin ratkin or human, the child is human kinfolk. We know that's one, or we know how human births work. However, if one of the parents is a materialized spirit, the freak that results as spirit kinfolk. So what we have here is they're outlining that they are so what's the term I'm looking for? So
virulent. No.
Yeah.
Virile.
Virile. That's exactly what I'm looking at. They're so potent to have these babies, right? There's babies that therefore it's not the parents that are kinfolk, it's the offspring. Those offspring have a percentage chance of being ratkin already. That's just by dint of birth. And the more success being with the litter, right? Because that's way more that one of them are going to be ratkin in. But wait a minute. We can also do this with a spirit?
Oh, yeah. Because
okay.
because some rat spirits have such intense ancestral rage that they just manifest out of the umbra to get their fuck on.
So this is fertility. It's talking about being fertile, is why we were trying to refer to as well, which is a gift from the wild. The wild creates, and this is what the ratkin can do. So they do not have a problem making more of their own. So much so, as you said, they have an infection that they can give someone by biting them. And it's a certain type of ratkin can do that. Now we should point out. Well, I don't know if we should, but how do they get there? Well, this needs to make sense. What spirit materializes to do this? Well, the condition. Remember, we said they all fled into the Umbra to flee the werewolves and survive, right? You remember that, Mike?
Yep.
Now, when they do that, the longer you spend in the Umbra, the more risk you have of becoming spirit. 100%. It's the only way to sustain yourself, and eventually the Umbra just makes that happen for you. And that's what they're talking about, that there are ratkin that won't move on even when they become spirits. They're so rage-filled and waiting for their time of revenge that they sit and wait and guide other ratkin, especially those who get bit. And what they do is, as they go through this relapse, as they call it, from the birthing plague, this person, whoever's infected, even if they're born, by the way, it's the same process. It's just that it could be dormant. I should point that out so it's less confusing. Imagine, if you're born as a ratkin, nothing happens to you this generation. But then you knock boots with somebody else. And then that kid comes out. That kid starts tripping, having nightmares and what have you and whatever. And lo and behold, it's because there's some spirit, Bob the Ratkin Elder, decides to guide them with these visions to help them come along. And then the rat god does the same thing, whoever the rat god is. Now, to me, it would be the totem rat. Right, it's a powerful incarnate version of rat, but no, it's the rat god, as they refer to it repeatedly. And I'm like, sure, whatever this is, let's just let it be what it is. But the point is, eventually they wake up to their cause, so they're not taught like the standard. I'm going to pull you to the side, kid, and tell you what it means to be a ratkin. There's a spiritual awakening in their DNA that is forced upon them, and they innately know what they're supposed to do from these visions and whatnot. Boom. That's what they're meant to do. That alone makes them the super Fera species of the whole entire werewolf game. That right there tells you, without them saying it, they're the most powerful of any of them. Like, keep your gifts, throw that out the window. They got superior numbers, and they can bring plague, and they can use whatever it takes, wherever it dwells, whatever they need, to wipe out any foe that they face. That's what they do. This is who they are. But this is why this story won't get told in a werewolf game. Your mixed Fera game where you have a ratkin, your ratkin isn't going to give 9 shits about a werewolf's plight because you're going to kill them. They're the ones on the menu. These are the assholes that try to kill you, and you don't forgive. You're here for vengeance. Every single one of them is. We might get along for a greater enemy, and you can throw that out there. But if you're that werewolf, don't sleep. And don't slip up. Because the moment you do, this rat's going to slip one right between the ribs. And leave you bleeding and screaming. Because that's what you did to their kind. And so that's what they're about. And by the way, every one of the Ratkin believe in a heroic sacrifice, just like Chuvy in the beginning. Take the bomb sack with you into the mouth of the monster and blow it up, because I left many offspring, and their DNA will awaken, and guess what? You'll have Chuvy number 2 coming right for you, slamming another bomb down your throat, because that's how we roll. Interesting way to reproduce a never-ending generational army that, if you think about it too much, should be at the top of any food chain. In terms like Werewolf the Apocalypse, it should be called Ratkin the Takeover, because it's an apocalypse for you chumps, because wolves can't hang. But in this new apocalyptic world, we're still slinging yay, and we're called Ratkin, and we're making it happen. And it's all on how you want to present this book. And this book tap dances around them saying we're superior or we're in charge, except when you get to look at what they do, let's do that. Let's do that, Mike. Let's talk about these aspects that they awaken in the blood for the Ratkin here real quick.
All right.
And I'm going to help you with this. Insofar as to say, what's a tunnel runner?
They're scouts and spies. They are the sneaky Ratkin who find a way or make a way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let me say what the book says. Tunnel runners are the mavericks of Ratkin society. They act as scouts and spies of the swarm. Consumed by wanderlust, they learn of secret paths through the worlds of flesh and spirit.
Okay. Well, this makes it important, right? They know rights and whatnot to get into the Umbra, out of the Umbra. That's very important for how to get around sidestepping through the spirit world. They know tips and tricks. They got some gifts to help with that, some rights to help with that. And this is what tunnel runners do. However, I'm going to ruin this book for anyone who's a fan of Warhammer. Mike, you're familiar with Warhammer?
Familiar. Growing familiar, yes.
You ever play a video game called Vermintide? We'll just go that direction.
No, I haven't got.
You never played Vermintide?
It's on the list.
Okay. Well, what we'll say, because I won't completely ruin it for you, because I want your take on it, is that they describe that there is a vicious species of rat people that we'll say that from their perspective, they're the rulers of the world. They're going to survive what goes on. They're not evil. They're not good. They're very hard to put down. They're enemy of all. They live underground, make huge cities, and they have tunnel runners as part of their gig. Like, they're directly in there. They do exactly what it says. Even what they wrote down here, that's what they do in this game. You've played video games with these races in it, if you've played Warhammer at all, and they're there. This further backs up your story where something popular must have been out in the back of someone's mind doing something, and we just directly co-opted it into a playable thing for the World of Darkness that didn't need it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but I always believe in salvageable. And by the way, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, if you're me, I like unique or uniquely felt story. Like the Ratkin isn't going to be, it's nothing new. There's tons and tons and tons of lore about rat shapeshifters existing at some point for various things. But it's those various folkloric reasons they exist that make them interesting. This is a take on it, but I already feel that there are already Fera that should have been more focused on and doubled down to do what apparently they say they're there to do. Or done in a way that made them cleaner and easier to see what side they're on and purpose they fulfilled. I.e., to me, they're better as survivors with werewolves, and the werewolves knew about it, and they're the Fera they didn't kill, as I already said, and that fixes everything about them. And you just got the hatred for werewolves, and they're the understanding ones. That if you think of it this way, if there was an unspoken agreement between the Guru and the Ratkin, and that agreement was this, that the Ratkin said, we're sorry, but we're going to have to unleash our birthing plague if you cannot save Gaia. We're going to leave you to tell us when you're done, when you cannot do that, and we will supplant you. And do what we have to do. We will honor your name. We will honor your memory. But you know what that means. When a werewolf is bred its last, when the teeth break on the last hunt they have against an unstoppable bane creature, enter the Ratkin. And that would be answering that. And then in the time of the apocalypse, which is what this is, right, for Werewolf the Apocalypse, why it's called that, it's the werewolves refusing to let go, understanding the Ratkin is stepping in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, makes
Right.
more sense than what we find in this text.
Right. And then to me, if that happened, you would have a stronger reason to have a Ratkin book, why players would play Ratkin, why they're stepping in. They're not enemies of Guru, they're helping them. And when they show up, they're like the kind of, not the cavalry. We're here to do dirt, and if you see us in your town, it is not a good thing. But you players were sent with us. This werewolf pack comes in. We're going to show you what we got to do, and we hope you can breed better than us, but we have targeted people we got to bring in with our birthing plague, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it had to be. I just felt it had been a cleaner thing and more to get behind. Sorry, Mike. Shadow Seers.
These are the Ratina. Shadow Seers guard forbidden secrets lying dormant in their blood. Unlike their more violent brothers and sisters, they value wisdom over vengeance. Through calm meditation, they can understand anything cloaked in shadows. Too much introspection, however, leads to insanity.
So this highlights, for them, knowing secrets, even the wrong ones, Wormlore even included, they don't suffer corruption. They suffer insanity. Now, but madness is part of the worm. Right? That's always been part of the worm. The worm itself went insane being trapped in the web. And however you want to look at that, they risk that happening to them. And that's what you saw with Chuvy, and you can see how this can go wrong for just about everybody. However, knife skulkers, and Mike, feel free to put it in your own words, man. We have to read the book verbatim, but sometimes they do put it best. I will say that, but please feel free to speak freely, man. What's a knife skulker?
It's difficult for me to put it in my own words and not sound derisive. Is the thing
Exactly? Okay. That's why I'm like, bro, just put it in your own term. We're cool.
The knife skulkers are mercenaries. Now, and you probably have a clearer picture of this than I do. I don't really see meaningful differences between the knife skulkers and the warriors, other than perhaps some sense of honor. But the knife skulkers hire out assassin skills to people who will pay the Ratkin price. That's what they are.
It's as simple as that. They're assassins and thieves. And actually, it's pretty cool when you think of them that way. Like, I'm going to tell you right now, if you had an all Ratkin game and just ignored the werewolf stuff, you could have a cool game. Right? That I'm going to tell you. I mean, I really do think you can. But when you write, and I know you disagree because the book's trash, but it's only because you're taking everything else into account. If you disconnect everything else and this is your only book, right? And then, like, the base book stat rules, right? Like, I need the main book for the basic setting, drama, and all that. And you ignore the werewolf part, this is pretty cool. Like, call it Ratkin, the chittering, or whatever you want to call it. But the point is, they have a purpose and they're going to do that. Now, why I say the knife skulkers are cool, this elicits the idea of an assassin's guild. Like you said, it's straight up. To me, because I'm on an X-Men kick, it elicits that meeting that Gambit's people had, right? It's the thieves and the assassins. They meet up to pay the tithe. And they get together in these remote bayou places and they discuss what they're going to do. That's kind of how I see the knife skulkers in terms of whatever side you want. But they answer only to them. That's what makes them unique to that aspect. And that's exactly the feel you have with knife skulkers here. But Mike, if the knife skulkers are that way, assassins and thieves, then what are warriors?
They feel like a more honorable take on a similarly martial type of rat. They'll train others. They practice conventional warfare tactics, and I think the text specifically calls out. They prove rats' rightful position as a totem of war. I don't know if I would go that far, but it gives you an idea of what the warriors think of themselves.
Let me tell you what they think, right, or where that comes from. Like, they go on to say something I think is a powerful quote for it. It says, the methods of the warriors are the methods of killing for the warriors range from the imaginative reconstruction of modern-day ninja to the elaborate strategies of survivalists and militias. So this is not, we're on the front lines slicing, stabbing, and annihilating people. Right? They're not, think about it, they're not built for that. They're stealthy, they're quick, they're skilled, right? That's something they're about, but they're going to rely on tactics, finding weaknesses, which are instinctual to them, to face their foe. They don't fight a foe so powerful head on. They find this weakness and exploit it later on, or survive to find that weakness. That's their point. In other words, they're saboteurs. That's what these warriors are. Masters of the swarm. Nothing's so big that we can't swarm all over and kill it. And that's how they feel. But you're asking yourself, what's the difference between them, as you said, and, well, the knife skulkers? Well, quite frankly, I feel the knife skulkers, as assassins and thieves, won't take anyone they can't handle. The warriors don't have a choice. Does that make sense?
I buy it. I feel like you are giving this text more credit than it deserves.
It's because I passionately believe there's a difference between a ninja and an assassin. A ninja is bound by clan, has taken an oath to serve from familial stance, a sense of honor. They're the scumbags, so nobody else has to be. They're the shadow that nobody else will have to dishonor themselves and become. And they willingly take it on behalf of the emperor they serve. And in regards, their family lives in a remote mountaintop somewhere where they're given that land to train and do as they will, and they seem to be simple farmers or simple merchants, whatever it needs to be. That is a ninja by tradition. In reality, they're saboteurs. They don't attack the enemy head on. They go in and poison food storage. They go in and poison the water well. They will kill select people in that army in the night and walk away. They'll sabotage a bridge. They'll stop movement of the enemy. They'll set fire to a couple tents to hopefully get everything else because it's a windy night. This is the idea of a saboteur. They're not there to win the war, right? But they're there to cause that havoc that could do that. Where an assassin, you're hiring us to go kill the emperor of that army and call it a day. Yeah, we're not going to do that. He's surrounded by the 52 sword-killing samurai we heard about. Yeah, we can't take them. And odds are we're going to alert them. So we're just let this pass us by. By the way, you need to take us at our word because we go by who pays the best. No offense. You're some village that they're about to come crush. I'm willing to bet they're going to pay us double just to see you dead. So we're going to do you a favor. We're just going to walk away. Now you may ask yourself, what's the difference between assassins and thieves and ninja? If you can't get that by now, is that assassins and thieves operate with a sense of self-preservation.
Pragmatism.
Whereas the ninja would see whatever the threat, whatever the enemy, our job is to sabotage and whittle them down to where they can be takeable or annihilated. However it works. So the school of anything goes. And when they slap down that survivalist motif, you get that's exactly what it is. If you ever thought you were taking over a survivalist farm, right? We're the government, we're coming to take whatever. There's a reason they kept their guns, smartass. You're not going in to have, you're under arrest, so you're going to pull out your cuffs. No, you're going to come back with a stump. They're prepped to have that fight. And, they told you as much. That's why they are a threat in certain cases and a blessing in certain scenarios. You can't watch a Walking Dead or Black Summer or any other zombie show without noting that the most powerful characters on that show were the survivalists and preppers. They knew something was coming and they were ready for it. And that's how that goes. And that's what these warriors are as rats. They're not werewolves, though. We're gonna point that out. Is that what you were referring to when you think of a warrior? You think more of the rage-induced werewolf?
Yeah, well, that and it just seemed like I had to imply some kind of honor code in the warrior. By the way they describe it, otherwise it's the same as the knife skulkers. So it will be fair to make a Garu comparison because Garu complain. I mean, they claim all these principles even when they don't live by them. But yeah, you gotta. I mean, you said it. You summed it up. The warriors have a distinction in purpose. Their why is quite a lot stronger than a knife skulker. It just seems to me that on the right day, a warrior is going to be an assassin because that's what the job takes. So we're kind of splitting hairs. But I'm picking up what you're putting down. It's a relevant distinction.
We're not splitting hairs. We're pointing out that they were splitting hairs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They made 4 unique ways, as they call it, that you could play Ratkin right there. That's the 4 unique sacred ways. And just to recap, you have the scouts, which are the tunnel runners. You have their mystics, which are the shadow seers. Then you have the knife skulkers, which are their assassins and spies. And then you have their warriors, which, according to their text, read like playing modern-day ninja or survivalist. All right, far out. That's the 4 ways you can play them that fit a rat theme. You can tell us what they wanted to fit, and that's where that goes. However, like, there's more, and we need to point this out because remember the birthing plague and the fertility of the Ratkin and making more of their own kind make it to where, well, they don't exactly control. That was the 4 sacred ways, the ways approved since the dawn of yore. What's happened since we can knock boots with spirits, Mike?
You got some slight perversions. Well, I mean, from a certain point of view, right? The Ratkin would say they've adapted to modern times and presented some new tactics to the present day battlefield circumstance.
We've adapted to the apocalypse by swerving the right hips, right? That's what they're saying. In other words, the sign of the times, we've adapted. What's some of those adaptations we got here, starting with the Plague Lords? Well, we should note that the Ratkin refer to these group that we're about to mention. There's 4 of them. They call them freaks.
Yeah.
Which means amongst their own kind, they're like, oh, you're one of those. Okay. We're getting a little far-fetched here, but okay. It's amongst their own. But Mike, what's a Plague Lord?
They are the masterminds behind things like the bubonic plague, right? They were thought to be wiped out at a certain point. Not actually, because this is the world of darkness. And they spread disease, research dark arts, and do all types of dastardly, underhanded no-goodness. In the name of revenge and chaos and culling the human population, obviously.
Virulent plagues.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than to a populace. You want to kill a group of things, you hit them with a plague. COVID, if there's any indication to the world, it's on that level. Like that's how ridiculous they could be. It's a powerful thing that they could do. What about Ratkin engineers?
Pinky in the brain.
Come again, in case I don't get that lovely cartoon.
So Ratkin engineers, they get a little bit of a treatment later in the book. They're basically the super smart mad scientist rats who are capable of some, well, high level engineering. They make weapons of war. They can deal with the computer stuff and manipulate Weaver tech.
They orc it up.
The wah.
That's what they do. They work it up. They're like the Gork and Mork of the world of darkness here. As they say, from the rubble of the modern world, they salvage and devise ingenious devices. They have that feel of MacGyver meets mad scientist, as you said, rightly so. And that to me is freaking broken, but cool. It's cool. It's what they can do is pretty interesting. Then we have the Munchausen.
This, by the way, is on page 16, and it is the part of the book where I knew what I was in for. This name, Munchausen, get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry. These are the mad seer rats. I can't remember if they're precisely always the offspring of rat spirits, but they're definitely deeply Umbra touched. And they just have these portents of the future or prophecies of whatever. They see into the spirit realm. Some of them claim to be like fae creatures. They have... Look, these guys can rant to the point that they create like a mini consensus around themselves that forces some of their rantings to come true in the Umbra. It's like a weird spiritual power they have.
Hey, you want to talk about weird spiritual power? How about the fact that this is what they're referring to as knocking boots with spirits? You find one of these spirits, guys, and you knock boots with them, your kids are born as spirits, but the birthing plague will transform them into flesh and blood. What? So just because you're what?
Well,
I can't even make that make sense.
Remember how they told us we got materialized rat spirits in the first place, right? The rats ran off in the Impergium, and then they got so deep into their fifis that they just pressed back into the material plane full of rage. And what they decided to do with that rage was have some sex.
It's, well, it's there. That's what I'll do. I've been called nitpicky before. But folks, when you don't have a standard, you get munch-mousing. When you don't have a standard, that's what you get. And what this chalks up to me is that you remember the Bard's tongue in Mage?
Yeah, vaguely.
Okay. Well, let's just say if you look at Mage the Ascension, there's some unique things where running your mouth can cause reality to do some interesting things to you. And this is one of those things. It's a direct translation to me to that. It's a way to bring it in and kind of wet your whistle, introduce you to it before you play that. It's also a unique thing to give them. And not saying it's all bad, just saying don't look for a solid reason. Just go with it. It is written, therefore you can use it. Last but not least, we have the Twitchers, and I got you here.
Yeah,
These are the Ratkin who reflect the rage of a dying world. As servitors of the Rat God, they unleash anarchy and destruction, preparing humanity for the final days of the apocalypse. Succumbing to rage is all too easy for these mad men and women. They delight in ranting false prophecies of the world's doom. Now, what I'm going to say. Twitcher is what Chuvy was, and that's in the comic, and that's what you could look forward to. And that's going to pretty much be this book, is as far as we're going to roll into in an hour, and an hour 20, actually, by me looking at the timer. It's my bad. We're chewing on it, kind of spitting it out to get some digestible bits. But if that entertained you, please pick up the Ratkin book. It's awesome for you. It's your book if you like what you heard. Otherwise, it was a good effort and attempt to keep the genre alive and thriving from an angle. It's just not an angle that caught well because I think everybody who had it went, I don't know. Right? It just didn't hit right. And it didn't hit right with Mike. It certainly didn't hit right with me and my bro. And there's a lot of people it didn't hit right with. But folks went, we get why you like it. You know, for one shot or you want to run its unique thing, maybe it works for you. However, if you're a diehard fan and you said it fits in Werewolf when we ran those campaigns, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear how you brought in the species that wants to kill werewolves and came back to do that, and everything else.
Yeah,
and how that works. And I can think of it too. You know, the enemy of my enemy. Except that doesn't work here, because every time I think about, I put yourself in my shoes, Mike. You know, I do this a lot, but this is my flavor, right? If I can't make it work, why can't I make it work? Well, I can't make it work because even if you look at the so-called the children of Hakim, I asked my Sabanu Hakim, they were given a task and a purpose, and they're waiting for Daddy to come home to sort it out. And if Daddy comes home and says, kill all these vampires, so that's what the hell I make you for, then that's what will happen then. But until then, we can kind of copacetic, get along with concepts and work in these societies. However, the Ratkin, no, they all came back to bring the curse. Now's the time to kill at will. And get that. We're here for the apocalypse. We're bringing the rage. We're the storm. We're the end. We're the reason you die. And we come in swarms. Hundreds of thousands of chittering eyes are the last thing you see.
But we're also the protagonists.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. We're here for good. We're here for mankind still. By mankind, who we choose to live by giving them the birthing plague or humping into existence. So mankind, if you breed with us, you can live, and then our offspring get to be other Ratkin because they're kinfolk, and then we're good there. But obviously, if you're not down for that, we're just going to kill you.
Yep.
So that's how that works.
Yep.
So anyway, this is the show. We certainly hope you folks enjoyed it. I understand that might be a bit ribby of a take. Too bad. That's I say that because this is our opinion. You know, we read it, we went through it. Sorry, folks. This actually, I won't say sorry. I'm saying it was entertaining to do. The book is entertaining of a read, and if it's your cup of tea, drink it. If not, pass it on. So, thanks, Mike, man. I do appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Always a great time. Always.
It's a blast, folks. We'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to our 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade podcast. If you like what you heard and would like to support us, please leave a review or share it with friends. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.